To go live.
There we go.
Hi everybody and welcome to LGBT+Live. This is Melissa here from the Youth Information Project. And Cassandra.
Hi everyone, this is Cassandra. I am a detached youth worker with Youth Work Ireland Cavan, Monaghan.
So Cassandra, it's just me and you today.
Yeah.
We've been left on our own, but we can manage.
We can do it. Yes, we can.
So how are you?
Good.
I'm good too. I'm looking forward to getting back out into the world. Hopefully we'll be returning back to work soon enough.
Yeah.
We'll be in our homes anymore.
Yes, maybe not so much. It'll be nice to get back to a little bit of normality. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so today we're going to talk about some common myths about LGBT people. So there might be some things that people have like preconceived notions of what an LGBT person is, or something that they do, or an orientation. So we're just going to run through some of them that we've heard before or we've seen that are out there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is, so this is a myth, all lesbian women are masculine and all gay men are feminine. So we know, like, even, in years before, that's the way it was kind of depicted on TV and stuff, like women were butch and men were like acting very feminine. And it can be like that, even in terms of homophobic bullying, it can be that even if a heterosexual person, like a boy, is kind of a bit effeminate, he's called gay. So it's a myth kind of that's out there. So what do you think of it?
Yeah, it definitely is a myth, and it definitely, like, you hear it all the time, as you say, like somebody who could be straight, but like a boy who could be straight but is a bit feminine is automatically, labeled as gay, and that is absolutely not the case. Obviously, we all have different characteristics, and if we're naturally masculine or feminine, whatever, like we all have different qualities, we all have different characteristics, and LGBT plus people are no different, so it's all down to the individual. It's never, as black and white as that,
Yeah, like it's even talking about like we're all just our own people, and it's kind of maybe something that it's like old stereotypes that are
exactly.
kind of around, and it was kind of like people's way of trying to decide if somebody was gay or not, like the way they were acting or what way their hair was cut, or what clothes they were wearing and stuff like that. So it's even trying to get people to kind of re-educate themselves that, we're all totally different, we all have our own personalities, we all have different ways in which we want to dress, and even about, like if you're presenting as female or you're presenting as male, or if sometimes I might wake up in the morning and I feel like wearing very masculine clothes, like a majority of us wear trousers all the time. So it's kind of trying to get rid of stereotypes that are there in society.
Exactly. And as you say, people maybe trying to educate themselves a little bit more, opening their mind, because as you said as well, everybody's so different, and it really does not come down to our sexual orientation, how we look, how we present. Everybody has their stories, has their what they like to dress in, what they don't, and really it's about people having a little bit more of an open mind and not just assuming they know people based on how they look or how they come across, or very simple, but
it is. Okay, so here's another one. So a myth: being LGBT is a choice. So is, being LGBT, is it a choice or not?
Absolutely not. Our sexual orientation is not a choice. It's the way that we're born, like, we don't choose who we love, we don't choose who we're attracted to, we don't choose that, we're born that way. And a lot of people, especially in the past and even now, maybe, there are some people who think that, straight is the default sexual orientation, and then anything after that is a choice. It's not. We are born the way we are. It's not a choice. It's not something that we wake up someday and say, well, I'm actually going to be, you know, bisexual tomorrow, or I'm going to be gay next week, or, you know, it's who we are, you know, and that people need to realize that that's who we are deep down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I was even talking to Barry last week about, you know, what age were you when you realized you fancied somebody? So like I was saying, I was very young, and everybody probably can relate to fancying someone when they were very young. So, and that wasn't a choice. It's just kind of in you. You just kind of see a person and kind of go, oh, I really like them, or get excited, or have a funny feeling in your stomach, or whatever it is. So it's not something, it's instinctual who you like.
Exactly. It's natural. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely natural. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think we've been harboring on about that one for quite a while, so we'll skip to the next one.
Yeah.
That's a regular theme here. So, okay, so a myth here, and you would hear this maybe years ago, would be that LGBT people have more partners and they're not monogamous. Okay, so that would have been a big thing around sexual orientation, and that maybe, you know, LGBT people were sleeping around, and this kind of talk was going on years ago. But that's definitely a myth, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a myth. And I mean, as we come back to it again, like, there's no difference between, you know, LGBT people and people who are not LGBT, and who they decide to have sex with, or who, you know, or the amount of people. Like, anybody can have multiple partners. Just because you're part of an LGBT community does not mean at all that you will definitely have more partners in life, and that you're not willing to commit. There are plenty of many LGBT people who commit to relationships. You know, it's definitely, that does not, no, that's definitely a myth.
And like,
yeah.
I think it's something as well about kind of demonizing LGBT people in the past, because like even all the negative words in relation to LGBT people are about sexual acts. Okay, so I'm not going to go into specifics on Facebook, but all of the sexual acts that maybe LGBT people get called negatively or are associated with them, all straight people do all those sexual acts as well. So
exactly.
it's quite funny to think that people were calling them those names, and probably behind doors were doing the same sexual acts themselves. So it was all this kind of negativity that was being driven around being LGBT, and some of that was around religion, and religion making it a very negative thing. So there was all of that kind of stuff backing it up, where it should be that, yeah, you know, there's plenty of straight people out there that are not monogamous.
Exactly. Again, it just comes down to an individual. You know, people are very, very quick, especially, you know, in the past, but even now, to generalize and say, well, all LGBT plus young people, or people, sorry, in general, are this, and all people over here in this group are this. Everybody's an individual, and everybody does things based on their own individual wants, needs, and everything else. You know, you cannot generalize. You can't generalize, you know.
Yeah. And even going on to the next one is that I'm more likely to catch an STI from someone who's LGBT. And, you know, looking at that, obviously that's a myth. And thinking about that, it's brought me back to my college days. And we had somebody coming in doing a talk with us. And it was around that at that time, LGBT people couldn't give blood, because there was a presumption there that LGBT people were more promiscuous, and that they might have an STI or AIDS or something like that. But when the guy was in the auditorium, he actually said, put up your hand, you know, who's sexually active just in general, and put up your hand how many people here get regularly tested for STIs. And there's actually a higher percentage of LGBT people who are responsible and get themselves tested for STIs, and a lot of straight people don't get themselves tested for STIs. So I think sometimes LGBT people might be more in tune with having to do that, where straight people aren't, and yet they're being discriminated against about kind of giving blood. Now, I know that they can give blood now, but they have to like commit to being celibate for a certain amount of months, which is absolutely ridiculous. And like, why are straight people not asked to do the same thing? So there's still some discrimination there. And even there's like an indirect discrimination going on there about, oh, you know, they're more likely to have an STI.
Yeah, and like, I mean, again, it comes down to the fact that if you have unprotected sex with anybody, you are more likely to, you know, to get an STI, regardless of their sexual orientation. So really literally comes down to that. Like, you know, if you decide to have sex with anybody, you have to, you know, use protection, because your chances are always going to be higher if you're not using any protection. So that's another myth, yes. And as you say, perhaps they're more careful. LGBT people might be a little bit more careful. But yes, it's a myth, because, as I said before, if you don't use protection with anybody, regardless, straight, LGBT, anybody, your chances are much higher of getting an STI. So it's just about being careful no matter who you're with, you know.
Yeah, there's a great poster done by the HSC. It's probably quite old, but it's like a couple standing together, and one of them saying, oh, I've only ever had sex with one person. And then the one person standing there, and, you know, they had sex with 4 people, and the 4 people had sex with another 4 people, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. How, you know, how it could keep going, that you think you've only had sex with one person, but in actual fact, it's everybody that they've had sex with and who everyone the rest of them have had sex with. So it can grow pretty quickly if
you're not using protection. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we have another one. We have 2 here about transgender people, and the myth is that transgender people are gay. Okay, so there's a myth there that, oh, and even having LGBT, having transgender at the end of the LGBT acronym is a bit of a funny one, because, you know, transgender is really about gender identity, and it's not really around sexual orientation. So lesbian, gay, bisexual is around your sexual orientation, but gender identity is actually something totally different. It's who you identify as a person. So you're not necessarily gay if you're transgender. What do you think?
Exactly. Sexual orientation and gender identity are completely different things. And like that, you know, if you are if you're gay, you can still be transgender. If you're lesbian, if you're bisexual, you can still be transgender. Again, it's completely individual. There's no one thing, you know, it's a very individual thing. There's no one size fits all. It's completely individual. And again, a massive myth that is out there. There can be lesbian, gay, bisexual, straight, anything else, you know. So yeah.
And it's such a tricky subject to get into, but if people want to look up more about it, if they just, like, gender identity is one subject and sexual orientation is another subject. So if you want to take it that those are 2 separate things, and have a look into it there. Another one is all transgender people have surgery. So, you know, when you say somebody's transgender, I know even some older people, or people maybe that are not, sorry, I'm being very generalized to older people. Some people mightn't realize that when you say you're transgender, they think they've had the whole surgery, they've had the whole hog, but that's not true.
No, and it may never be true, you know. Somebody who's transgender may never have any, you know, operations or anything like that. Again, as you say, you know, if you're not exposed to people who are transgender, or
that's,
you know,
a better way to put it.
Yeah, or even educated, it can be hard. And you know what, for the best, for I think a lot of people, it's one of those things that it's we don't want to offend anybody by talking about, but then I think by not, you know, talking about it, it is offending people, because it's part of our society, and transgender people are a huge part of our society. But yeah, they may never have any surgery. Again, individual thing, and it's down to each individual what they do. So yes, it's, I suppose, a good thing not to just assume that, you know.
And even for people, like, it can be that mightn't understand, some transgender people may just decide, okay, I'm going to wear, assume a different name. I'm going to wear different clothes. I might change my hair. So basically change my appearance. And I'm going to ask people to, refer to me with different pronouns of he, him, she, her, they, them. And that might be enough for them. So that's called socially changing. So they're just changing who they are socially. And it's a good way of people starting, because it's getting them used to having this different identity, and for them to see how their friends react, how their family reacts. But that might be enough for them. Then the next stage is some people might start to take hormones. And again, they might get to that stage and they've taken the hormones, and again, that might be enough for them. Or some people may not like the effects that the hormones have on them, or it doesn't suit them, and they might stop taking them. So there's different stages that transgender people can go through, and then some of them can have surgery if they want, but it's all up to the individual and what suits them and how they actually get on with the process.
Exactly. And if it meets what they need at a certain time, or if it doesn't, it might not be for everybody. And as you say, they might try something out and it might not work for them, and that's okay. And whatever's enough for somebody is enough, Mm-hmm. And I think, if we're just all a little bit more cautious about, how we perceive it, how we talk about it, and a little bit more open-minded, and not just to assume. Again, all comes down to assuming what one person has had or has not done. It's all about the individual.
I know. And even for parents, then sometimes, I know myself from people I know that their young person has come out to them as transgender. It can be very, very scary for the parents if, like that, they're not educated or they may not know much about it, and they feel like it's going to be an absolute dramatic change that's going to happen. And it mightn't be, and it might be, they're still, your child, they're still that person. It's just they want to change a few things about themselves. So it's trying to, like that, have chats like this about it to make people more aware of that. It doesn't have to be some big scary thing, away somewhere else that you're not able to identify with.
Exactly. And I'm sure, it can be a scary time for people, especially for the individual who is transgender and is trying to tell people that, they're not, as they have identified or whatever. So yeah, it might, again, as you said, that's still the person that you've always known. Yeah. And just to keep that in mind when maybe you're having that conversation, or, Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so we've a few about bisexuality, and sometimes they would say people who are bisexual get a bad rap because they get called greedy, and they get called things like they don't really know what they want, and all of these kind of things. So there's a few here about bisexuality as well, so I'll just call out some of them. So there is a myth that bisexuality is just a phase before someone actually comes out as gay or lesbian. So sometimes it's said that it's kind of the safe option to say that you're bisexual, maybe test people's opinions and stuff like that. But then for people who are bisexual, it's very offensive when somebody says that to them.
Absolutely. So, and like, it might be that might be the case. Maybe somebody isn't comfortable, coming out as gay or lesbian or whatever else it might be, and they just want to test how people will treat them, how they're going to feel, and that might be the case. But again, it's an individual thing. Not all bisexual people are then going to come out as gay or lesbian, so it's just important to remember that if somebody tells you that they're bisexual, that does not mean that further down the line they're going to be like, no, actually, no, I'm gay. As I said, it can be the case, but not always.
Yeah, I know. Okay. No, I did that one. All bisexual people sleep around and have lots of partners. So it's kind of saying that, because it's again go back to that thing of saying that bisexual people are greedy, really, isn't it? You know, that they want, you know, everything, and that, you know, they're deciding, well, oh sure, I can sleep around with loads of people. So again, it's going back to, you know, saying that there's this presumption that there's a lot of sleeping around going on, or that LGBT people can't be monogamous, or they're promiscuous in their sexual behavior. So it's again a bit of the demonizing going on there, isn't there?
Absolutely. And, you know, trying to paint that negative picture maybe. But again, completely individual thing. Many people who are part of the LGBT community will get married, and actually more recently, because we've had the same-sex marriage, you know, that in Ireland we can now get married as same-sex partners. So we've seen it more and more now, you know, of them getting married, and maybe perhaps that was a reason why they weren't getting married in the first place, because they weren't actually allowed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, massive myth. And there are plenty of LGBT plus people in relationships, and you know, who are willing to commit and do commit, and just like any other relationship, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, it just because there's no reason why anyone who's bisexual or LGBT that they can't be in loving relationships, that they have the same partner that they're happy in, and that, you know, I think it's more the thing of thinking that they're moving from one person to the other and all of this kind of stuff, which is so not true. And like you're saying, with they have the opportunity now to get married and to publicly show their love, which is great.
Exactly. And it's very important for anybody to feel that they can do that, you know, and be open about who they're with and who they're in love with. You know, it's all part of having that sense of belonging, you know. So yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've one last one, and that is that it's a myth that LGBT people can't be good parents. So if they're a same-sex couple, that they can't be good parents. And I suppose this comes, you know, we were talking about it earlier around the thing of saying, well, if you have to have one female and one male, one mommy and one daddy to be a good parent to a child. So that's around what the myth is, that, you know, because they're from a same-sex relationship, that they can't be good parents, or they can't fulfill the needs, I suppose, of the child. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, and I remember when the referendum was happening for same-sex marriage, that was all you seen, you know, on the posters, you know, that that a child needs a mommy and a daddy to grow up and develop properly, and all of this nonsense, when in actual fact it's proven a child just needs love and care and all their basic needs met, you know. And same-sex parents are more than capable, and it's been seen, you know, of doing that and have so much love to give. You know, again, it's down to, like, you know, labeling people with, you know, these negative things. Like, it's crazy. Anybody who's willing to love a child and support a child and, you know, meet their needs as they need, you know, is entitled and well deserving of having a child, you know.
And, like, you know, how lucky would the child be to have two parents who, you know, are going to love them so much? Why wouldn't they love them so much? And again, it's going back to the stereotypes of saying, well, does that mean if I have a mommy and a daddy, mommy's good at cooking and mommy's good at, you know, giving me the hugs and, you know, all of this, and then daddy's good at football and daddy is going to show me what it's, you know, how to be a man, kind of thing. Whereas go back to even just the total stereotypes of what a man and a woman is, and what a man is capable of doing and what a woman is capable of doing, and how they influence the child, when it can be that, you know, in any relationship, the woman can be, you know, the one that's, you know, fixing the things in the house, or, you know, the man is good at the baking or the cooking or whatever it is. So it's building up to this stereotype again of what we all should be.
Yeah, and like those gender roles that we were all taught that we should fit into and everything, you know, which is madness. Because as you say, everybody's so different, and that should be celebrated, you know, whether it is mommy putting a shelf up and daddy, as you say, baking, like, it's okay, and that should all be celebrated, and that should all be allowed to be a part of society, you know. So I think even just us having this conversation, or anybody having a conversation about it, is good. And as I said, anyone who's willing to love a child and meet their needs and give them what they need, you know, are deserving to be parents, and are definitely not bad parents just because of the relationship that they're in or how they identify.
Mm-hmm. And like, even there's a train of thought, I can't think of who it is at the moment, but of, you know, like a young person or a child, all they need in their life is one good adult.
Yes.
You know, so that if they've one good adult in their life that's a role model to them, that can kind of support them, show them the way. They don't have to be the perfect parent. They don't even have to be a parent. And when they say it's one good adult, it might be a youth worker, it might be a teacher, it might be a football coach, somebody to give a young person or a child guidance. And then there's this whole conception of, about being the perfect parent, and that suddenly if you had a mammy and a daddy, a male and a female, you're going to have the best childhood, which is totally untrue.
Yeah.
And if you have that dynamic, you're going to have the perfect family, or the perfect mother or father that does all the right things for you, which is just not going to happen.
Exactly. It's an individual thing, and if somebody's capable of being a parent, then they're capable of being a parent, regardless of, as I said, their sexual orientation or their partner or their lack of partner, or, you know, it's all down to the individual themselves, like how they raise a child. It's nothing got to do with being LGBT or anything else.
Sorry, I unmuted there because one of my children was passing. So it's kind of trying to break through those, even the things I suppose that you take for granted in your mind, that a lot of people have values and stuff that is in their mind from their childhood, that maybe they kind of need to kind of have a second look at, or have it, you know, rethink them, to say, well, why do I think that, or why do I think that the right thing is to have a mother and a father, and that will somehow bring up the perfect child, or give the child what it needs, instead of it just being a parent, one good parent that can you know, support the child on their way.
Exactly. Like, we all have to ask ourselves kind of questions like that all the time, like, where did we get those ideas from? And we all pick up ideas, you know, from growing up, and from our own parents, our own caregivers or whatever, in our home, at school. We all pick up ideas. And it's about, you know, hearing conversations like this and saying, well, wait a minute, I actually think like that. Why is that, and where did I get it? And you know, trying to educate yourself on flipping that, because it's very important that we all belong in society, you know, we all feel a part of it, and we all feel safe and welcomed. And I think if we all do our own little bit by asking those questions to ourselves and challenging ourselves, then we could all be a little bit more inclusive and a little bit more open-minded, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know why I'm talking about this, but anyway, there was 5 of us living in a house in college, and we're all from, you know, different households, and we all made eggs differently. And I always thought that was a good analogy of, like, we all came from 5 different homes, we all had different ways of making eggs, yet all the eggs were fine. It was just all had different ways of doing it. So it's kind of like that, of like, we all have different values, they all come from what we learned at home. So it's kind of looking around and seeing, well, you know, is something better than the other, you know, or are they all the same? It's just, we all were brought up differently, and we all have different values. So,
and that's okay, and should be celebrated. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's quite a good one. Yeah. Good one, Melissa.
Yeah. Okay, we've come up to our time, and I think we've busted a lot of these myths. So thanks very much for coming on, Cassandra.
You too. Thank you for having me, Melissa. Okay, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, we'll chat again soon. I know we have Facebook Live on Friday. I'm not too sure about Wednesday with Con, but we'll keep you updated on Facebook. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you soon.